All right, and away we go.
Hello and welcome to what it will be the last episode of NBA coverage for a little bit of while, a little like actual 24-25 business.
Yeah,
We're still going to cover the drafts. We're still going to cover some summer league and any trades that might happen. But we need to
or
put
have happened.
or have happened that have happened today.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do need to kind of put a bookend on the 24-25 season that ended on Sunday night in very dramatic and in some places some very sad fashions,
Traumatic and dramatic.
dramatic fashions. But it ended with the Oklahoma City Thunder winning their first franchise NBA championship. I do not count Seattle. We don't have to have a whole conversation about that. No one talks about the 79 championship. It is the Oklahoma City Thunder that is their first championship since their inception in 2008, led by SGA, who ended up winning Finals MVP to go along with Western Conference Final MVP, scoring champ, and regular season MVP. The man, I mean, that's the golden season. So I am joined as always with my co-host Aaron Bullwinkle. Aaron, how you feeling, buddy?
Uh, Feeling pretty good. Excited to get back on here and talk some basketball with you after the dust has settled and what has been an incredible season that was kind of capped off with a little bit of an underwhelming final game considering the circumstances, but with a great finals and a really exciting playoffs, which is the much more important thing. And as your co-host and friend, just a person who's excited for you, and for all the Thunder fan I know, I will say that there is not a fan base to me that I can think of that, generally speaking, tends to approach their mindset and how they present their love for their team in more of a positive fashion than Thunder fans, just collectively from what I've seen on threads. Like, you guys are really a solid group, just kind of in general about how you see the game. I think that there is a level of being intelligent about the game and about your team in a way that I like that you guys express in general. And so I'm happy. I mean, this is obviously a group I really like, and as your friend, I'm excited that you get to bask in the glory of this.
Well, thanks, man. I do appreciate that. Yes, I have been. I've been a fan of Oklahoma basketball since the New Orleans Hornets made their way and became the Oklahoma City Hornets after Hurricane Katrina. I've been rocking with this team for 20 years, basketball in Oklahoma, and it does feel just incredible. I was in tears on Sunday night. Not even ashamed to say it. I just, it's the culmination of a long fandom. And, there's no guarantees for small markets, but in Adam Silver's NBA, with as much parity as there is, there's always a chance. But it's especially cool for Oklahoma fans because it is their only pro sports franchise in the state. Even Indiana, who we are going to talk about a lot later. Even them, who they haven't yet captured their first title. They still have the Colts. They
Yeah.
have Peyton Manning. They have championships that they can go back and look on fondly, and say, we got to experience that. Oklahoma's never gotten to experience that. I mean, OU winning a national football championship in 2000. I mean, that is, probably the last time that a major championship has been in Oklahoma where we, actually took home a title. And it feels great. I have so many friends. My cousin, Adrian, was at the game, at game 7. One of my good friends, Andy, and his wife, Jessica, they sent us a bunch of pictures and a bunch of videos. Andy said that his head was throbbing. He said he had never been in a louder arena in his entire life. Um, he lost his voice, celebrated all night, even had a little bottle of champagne at the house for him and his wife. I mean, I'm so jealous. I'm green with envy that they got to experience that championship. But let's talk about Oklahoma City first. And let's
I
just
do want to. I want to touch on just one thing
oh,
that
please.
was not just Obviously, the Thunder fan base was phenomenal in this one, but in general, I think one of the things we really need to give credit to, and you're already talking about how impassioned these fan bases were. Both home crowds provided
Oh my
such
God.
a phenomenal backdrop to this series. Their engagement, like this is not the type of response you get from certain crowds where they're standing. I mean, that Thunder fan, that Thunder group didn't sit down that entire game.
Yeah.
That was insane, and on both ends you could just hear it, through like listening to the announcers struggle to get their call over the screams of the crowd was just something that I thought was another one of those elements that kept the energy and emotion of this series so high, and was really cool from both fan bases.
Yeah, absolutely. Gamebridge Fieldhouse looks like an incredible place to watch a basketball game. And I mark my words, I will find a reason or find a game to be in Indiana and watch one there sooner rather than later because that looked like an incredible experience. Uh, yeah, all the love and all the respect in the world to Indiana. But let's just real quickly, I guess not quickly, but we can talk about Oklahoma City real fast and just talk about the historical context that this Thunder season is going to be, thought about in. Because, obviously this is an incredibly young team. It is the second youngest team to ever win an NBA Finals behind the, what was it, 76, 77 Blazers?
That is correct.
Yeah. So by team age, this is a very young team. SGA is 27. Jalen Williams is 24. Chet is 23. Actually, I think SGA hasn't even turned 27 yet. So this was his age 26 season. Um, Everyone is under, they have their basically their top nine coming back. Their top nine players in rotation will be coming back. Plus, you get to add whatever draft picks they come up with tomorrow. Go ahead.
Well, it'll actually be interesting based on what you say. They're projected to pretty much have 15 contracts as it stands right now going
Yeah.
into the next season. So it's not just their top nine. Now, I do expect there to be some movement. It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. I think Kendrick Williams, if I remember correctly, has an option. Um,
Kidrich is the kind of guy that he has Nick Collison type
yeah,
of respect within the organization. So, and they've done this with guys before that they've respected, um, why am I forgetting his name? The Moose, his nickname was Moose, the tall white guy, shooter, center.
it was Mike Muscala, who
Muscala.
you we can
Muscala.
Mike Muscala lives in infamy for Lakers fans forever, and
Yes.
I absolutely love it. And for those that don't know, Mike Muscala was traded for Ivica Zubac straight up in one of the worst trades of probably the last 10 years.
Yeah,
Anyways,
they just wanted some sort of stretch shooter, and they traded Ivica Zubac for that. And there's a story that Jerry West, they were at dinner when the trade went through, and they were just laughing at the Lakers, and then just high-fiving and just making jokes about them. But Muscala is another guy that like has deep organizational respect. A guy that they just love. But eventually he got packaged into a trade, and they were like, "Yeah, we're always going to keep a good relationship with you, but sometimes you got to let people go." So I imagine that if Kenrich Williams, wanted to come back on a vet minimum, they would allow him to, but he's going to be involved in the organization the same way that Nick Collison and Mike Muscala hopefully someday is. When they have these guys that just really love the organization and that are really smart and that they really like, they're going to keep those guys around. But Kenrich Williams has shown throughout the playoffs that he has value. But
yeah,
I mean,
we've
it's like,
we've espoused his virtues plenty on here. We both are
yeah, but
obviously
I
big
just wanted to
fans.
say, I know that they have 15 contracts, but I'm saying the top nine, their actual rotation,
Yeah,
those guys are going to be on the team next year. Um, they do have some interesting numbers to crunch. We don't have to talk about the future stuff. I kind of just want to talk about this season
yeah.
and the historical context in which they played. So the greatest point differential in the history of the NBA, plus 1,249 points over nearly 100 games. So, 12 and a half points a game they were beating their opponents by. Um,
Which is especially impressive considering that they got boat raced in 2 games.
Very
Consider what
badly.
that would have been like if they hadn't gotten smoked by the Nuggets in that game and the Pacers in game
I
three.
mean, you could have added another 80 points to their differential
Yeah,
if that had happened. Say they lost those games by, you know, 1 or 2 points respectively. You're throwing another 80 points in
yeah.
there. differential, which is insane. My favorite stat that I posted on Threads was that Oklahoma City set the record for turnover differential.
Yeah.
So the previous record was the 2019 Toronto Raptors. They had 77. They were a plus 77 in turnover differential. Oklahoma City was a plus 131.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were able to increase their turnover rate in the playoffs, considering that the game slows down and there's less possessions, is incredibly impressive and really reflective of a defense that once we start to stack it up against other defenses all time. And for the turnover rate discussion, we do have to remember that that's a stat that hasn't been kept since the beginning of the league. But no matter what, we know this Thunder defense ranks as an all-time team where that's concerned. But their defense is going to be up there. I compared this group, just in terms of how we're going to kind of think of this group, like that 89 Pistons team, where I think obviously their offensive engine in Shea is better than anything the Pistons had, even though Isaiah Thomas is underrated for what type of offensive player he was, because he very willingly took a step back for the betterment of the entire team's offense. But I think as a collective group that really hung their hat on defense and had a really deep group in terms of how they could attack you defensively, just like that Pistons group, and were dominant from that. And the Pistons being more physical, this Thunder team just being a pack. We talked about the swarm on like our very first pod, and people kept referencing that, and that's obviously what they did, is the way they just swarmed you on the perimeter. Yeah. We're going to have long-standing memories of how their defense, Zach Lowe referred to it as the unsolvable puzzle, and it's correct. You just don't see many groups like this where it's like the thing that you were waiting for with them is when the defense was going to take over the game. Now, Shea obviously had his moments, J-Dub has his moments, but that Thunder defense was always a thing, we're not going to have to hammer it because everybody else has. The Halliburton injury is what it is. But what we knew was going to be the problem is now what do the Pacers do that they have to stand up to that defense? And one of the things that you saw is now everybody slots into a different role. Now Dort is chasing around other guys and was just giving them absolute fits. And there's just so many memories. Chet Holmgren being absolutely phenomenal as a rim protector really for the whole series. But in Game 7, his defensive effort was incredible. One of the unfortunate halftime show that we have to all be subjected to referred to Chet as a role player, and that just so undervalues how important he was to what they did and the fact that he really meant the difference in a lot of ways as a defensive player from the center and power forward positions.
The end of the ESPN halftime show cannot come soon enough.
You were nice enough to name them. I don't even want to name it anymore. Like, just please.
Thank God the Inside the NBA crew is coming over next season. And I know I'm still going to get stuck with Stephen A. Smith yelling at me for no reason, because thank God Bob Myers finally said it. I don't know if it's the first time he said it, because I usually mute these ESPN halftime show, even though I like Malika. I like Malika a lot, but
I feel so bad for her. I
cannot listen to Perk, Bob Myers, and Stephen A. Smith just say nothing and say it very loudly. But
Bob Myers with so much confidence. Like,
yeah, but at least Bob Myers, who finally was just like, just because you yell something doesn't make you right. Something I've been waiting for somebody to say to Stephen A. Smith for, I don't know, 20 years now. He's made his entire career about it. And he just yells at you, and it's wrong most of the time. He's just loud and wrong all the time. And yeah, the Bill Simmons podcast brought it up. I mean, what a perfect time to have Bob Myers on the show to talk about Kevin Durant and his calf strain in 2018, or I'm sorry, 2019. That led to him tearing his Achilles.
Yeah. And how you have to withstand
and how
that
you have to respond to that.
There was such an opportunity.
Such an opportunity to do that. And I swear to God. So I guess we're going to get into it now. So the play happens.
Yeah.
I see him go down, and he's pounding the floor with his fist, and he is screaming, no, 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 no. He knows. He knows.
We all knew.
We all knew.
We all knew.
We've seen this before. I mean, like I said, you and I will say this a million times. We're not medical professionals, but when you see that calf pop.
Yeah. And it's that specific movement, too. It's that plant or push.
And everyone knows what it looks like. It's like whenever you see a replay of an injury on a football field when everyone's now knows it's an ACL.
Yeah, he
You
plans,
just
the
know
leg
whenever it
gives,
gets
we
hit
all
or
know.
bent a certain
Yeah,
way, we're all aware.
yeah.
So it happens. And the first thing I texted my friend group, who I was, chatting with throughout the entire game, was that's exactly what happened to Kevin Durant in 2019.
Yeah.
Because everyone was like, not everyone was seeing it live. Some people were, I had a friend who was at the game. I had some people that were delayed, some people that, didn't get to see it in real time. So they're asking questions. And I was like, it's exactly what it looked like in 2019 when it happened to Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So if I know it, if I know like that you should talk about this, how does ESPN not know?
I mean,
So
yeah, the whole thing was crazy. I think a lot of us immediately like it was like, okay, now let's talk about the fact that Dame just did that. And just there were so many commonalities and so many interesting narrative threads. And like you said, more importantly, having Bob Myers of all people there, that's what that conversation should have been. And they are incapable of it. Now, let's just skip over them because I don't really want to get
no,
focused in
no,
any
yeah,
of the
you're right.
negative aspects of who they are and what they do, because I thought that it was handled really poorly all throughout the playoffs in terms of what their coverage and halftime show and all that is. Fine,
Okay,
whatever.
but it's over too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And next season I'm going to be interested because the inside the NBA guys, let's see what the leash and tether they get to do their own thing is.
Will be interesting.
That moment happens and we're all gutted. I mean, for me, I actually thought about how much longer I wanted to watch the game because I just couldn't really, Zach Lowe talked about it too. I couldn't get myself back into the place that I wanted to be in. I just felt kind of depressed and thrown off from the whole thing. I felt terribly for Halliburton particularly and for the greater series in general.
Yeah.
But that Pacers group, the mettle that they showed to
Yep.
respond the way they did is just over and over the same thing you and I have talked about. That mental toughness and that ability to withstand things is phenomenal. And a lot of people have already now talked about it for those that are listening to our pod because we didn't do a response one. But I said it in the moment that this Pacers team is going to go down as a group that we're just going to remember in a way that you don't remember from the team that lost in the finals. There are
Yeah.
just few groups that you think of and put on this type of pedestal because of the way that they played and the way they comported themselves and the way that they fought and the style of it all just really was like they galvanized as a group. And I think it galvanized a lot of basketball emotions around just kind of this passionate love for the kind of more pure, like, I hate doing this because one, it's Indiana, but obviously I'm a coach's son and I do have my own emotional tether to like what I think is like the purest, most enjoyable brand of basketball. And it's hard not to feel that with the Pacers group that just like, look, we're here to play and we're here to do our thing. And I think that's why also this series was such a respectfully competitive series too, was that these teams really, I think, there was admiration across the lines with them. And obviously Halliburton going down, I think it hurt the Thunder players. You could see they were shell shocked. Like I
Yeah.
posted immediately on threads that they were the team that obviously were hurt more by the injury. It deflated their energy and kind of took them out of themselves a little bit, which I think was also a testament to just empathy.
Yeah. I mean, the clip's been, making the rounds that SGA was one of the people that walked over to check on Halliburton before, obviously leaving it to his own teammates and to the own medical staff that had to check on him. But you could see SGA walked up to him, bent down, checked on him. I think he reached to like pat him on the shoulder, and then he walked away to allow Indiana's medical staff and everyone to start treating him and obviously get him off the floor. So I mean, there is a large amount of respect. SGA spoke to that after the game, called him a hell of a player. Really was kind of at a loss for words about it. Um, really, just a really tough scene. I mean, you could tell him he knew immediately. Everyone knew. I guess I mean we can have this conversation now. Do does the responsibility fall to the owners and to the front office and to the coaching staff about protecting these players from themselves?
So
Because I think it's a real double-edged sword.
yeah, so the
If you
very
sit the guy and he doesn't play and then he doesn't get hurt, but he also doesn't get to experience this moment, he might not ever forgive the franchise for taking that away from him. And then on the flip side, you've lost Tyrese Halliburton for the entirety of next season. He's not coming back. for until the 26, 27. Obviously, there's no right answer, but how do you feel about that responsibility? Do coaches, do organizations have more responsibility?
I mean, I posted immediately after the injury that we had now had probably enough data that it's going to have to show that players are going to probably have to be held out of these high leverage situations, because the reality is when the leg is compromised like that, and again, we're not medical professionals, we're just going based on now what we've been seeing with a little too much frequency. Those compensatory injuries are so likely. The biggest problem here is because one, Halliburton was playing through it and looked okay, even though we had a small sample size, but he played in game 5 and he was pretty good in game 6, albeit in, I think, 22 minutes of action. And then he looked so good to start game 7. You just, it's game 7 for an NBA franchise that hadn't been to the finals since 2000, right? Like, this is so hard, and this can be that moment that if Halliburton plays, whether he's injured or not, then we're not even questioning this. The injury kind of allows for us to retcon the whole decision. But, if this is game 3, then I think we all are immediately like, you can't play him. But when your team, like, it's just like you run 20, a marathon's 26.2 miles, and this is like a circumstance of pulling somebody off the track at the 25th mile. That's just so hard to do to
Yeah,
that person emotionally.
but you're pulling somebody off the track on the 25th mile who's like lethargic
No,
and dehydrated and needs, wants to finish, but maybe needs someone to save them from. I'm just playing devil's
no,
advocate.
no, I fully understand. And I'm not, it's too, I think really in any other game, it's so much easier for us to question this because it is that decisive game at a point
Yeah.
where that just, it makes it. Now, look, the reality is not only do they lose him next year, Halliburton has been very good, but never really looked like the same player since he sustained that weird hamstring injury that he tried to play through for the second half of last season. So now we're starting to accumulate lower extremity injuries for a player who's not necessarily based on his pure athleticism, but his stop and start and those things that require the ability to push off quickly are going to be more and more compromised just going through this. So it's not
Yep.
just what next season looks like. It's what does the player look like coming back? Because it's, we've seen guys have success, but I don't know that we've seen anybody come back from an Achilles injury where we went, well, he's back at 100% of his athleticism. Halliburton's younger than some of the other guys that we've seen be subjected to it, but it's just a really tough thing to work back from. And I don't, I think that going forward, because we're continuing to accumulate more of this kind of both medical and anecdotal data, hopefully we're going to see probably some changes in how this is approached. It's just really, really hard to fault what they were doing considering the circumstances and keeping a player off that just cares so much. And, look, if I'm sure if you asked Tyrese Halliburton, and maybe somebody has, I haven't really been reading much the last 2 days. If they asked him, hey, considering knowing what you know now, would you still have gone out there? I can almost guarantee he would say absolutely, because he's a competitor and guys want
Yeah.
to give everything that they have. Because the worst thing is if he doesn't play that game and they lose, and what does that do to his emotional and personal state of being going forward as well?
Yeah. That's what I mean. There's no right answer to this because people are going to call, they're going to see it both ways no matter what you decide. And I think it's a lose-lose situation. If he plays and gets hurt, if he doesn't play and they lose, there's never the right decision. But like for the overall health of the organization and for the star player and for let's just, let's be a little bit robotic about this and just talk about the asset in itself. Now you've got Tyrese Halliburton, who's going to have this long road of recovery, this team that was just in the finals and has ways to retool and get better, who could have made it to another finals in a very weak East next season. They could walk through the East based on, obviously we don't know all the moves that are going to be made, but you've got Cleveland, New York, Orlando, Indiana, and then from there, it gets the drop off of the next few teams gets real steep. So the East is very winnable. So you can look at that and say, okay, we lost to the Thunder in game 7, but we have an opportunity to run this back next year and we can be in the exact same position, albeit with an even better, more defined roster with more experience.
Yeah.
So
But
yes, there's no right answer, and I'm not trying to say Carlisle anybody did anything wrong. You're
no,
right. It's competition. It's a
yeah.
game. And
Yeah.
these guys want to compete. He wants to be out there. It's very hard to say no to somebody who's fought so hard to get there. But sometimes with particular injuries, this isn't a broken finger. It's not a, you know,
It's not even an severe ankle sprain or
yeah, an
stuff
ankle
that this
sprain.
is
It's
an
not
injury that
anything like that.
often, yeah, this is a
We
sprain
know
that
what
often
calf
augurs
strains lead
worse
to.
injuries. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we know what calf strains can lead to. And it's been, you're right. We have too much evidence that's coming out that these organizations are going to look at these guys and just be like, I'm sorry, man, but we have to sit you down.
Can
Soft tissue injuries and muscle injuries, those are scary.
can we talk about how many players are probably going to be changing this number, their primary number
Number
this
zero,
offseason? Like, yeah, the
Damian
fact
Lillard, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton.
all tear their calf in the playoff wearing number zero. That is some spooky,
All
weird
in the
ish.
all in the
Yeah.
Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Someone protects Russell Westbrook at all costs.
yeah,
Get
but
get. I
he
don't care
changed
what
his
happens to
number.
Gilbert Arenas.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
wrong, that's fine. If
Yeah.
well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say. I know that his son was just in an accident. I was just
No, but
making
you're
a
not
joke.
wishing him ill
Not
will.
wishing him
Like,
harm.
yeah, yeah,
Harm.
no, nobody is doing
I'm
that,
just
of
not a
course.
huge fan of Gil, but
Nor
yeah,
should any
that was
rational mind be.
uh, um, yeah, I mean, the heart of this Indiana team, how well coached they are, how well built. Kevin Pritchard, I already sung his praises, him and Sam Presti,
Yeah.
both built incredible contenders. I told you that I put money on the Pacers to win that Knicks series before the Eastern Conference Finals even started.
Yeah. I mean, we were
Like,
both in full
I
agreement.
have been
Yeah.
a fan, and I like the way that team was built, and I'm so impressed because everybody wrote them off, and
They
nobody
are the
thought,
they are the ultimate sum of their parts team. And
yeah.
that is a complete reflection of organizational direction led by coaching, led by their best player, all just kind of downstream influences from a kind of singular ideology of how we play basketball as a team. We play
Mhm.
basketball fast and we take care of the basketball. And they have done such a good job. You know, people have talked about Matherin kind of being the stylistic outlier, but I like that a little bit because I think you have to be able to have a counterpunch sometimes. But their team was all built by Pritchard with that singular kind of mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to organizations that actually do the research and actually look into these things. Um,
And
Sam,
have an identity. I mean, just not to hammer it home, but you and I have talked about, and we'll get into it as we start to talk about off-season stuff. There are some teams and organizations out here who you couldn't tell me what they are or who they think they are for the last 10 years, right? Like they're just throwing darts. These are both organizations very, very clearly knew who the hell they wanted to be, what they wanted to hang their hat on, and how they want to build that and what fit within that in such a beautiful way.
yeah, it's, organizations that also understand how the league works because these small market teams need to be investing more than any of the big market teams in scouting and, the draft because that's the way you're going to build your team.
Player
Or
development.
the player development is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think Oklahoma City hired a G League coach to pair with their very young roster when they hired Mark Dagnall back in 2020?
A G League coach who won a G League championship with Alex
With
Caruso.
Alex Caruso, relationship before Alex Caruso even got here.
Yeah.
But the Nets did the same thing with Kenny Atkinson, had a developmental coach to grow this young team. They ended up making the playoffs. Now, I think Kenny Atkinson got unfairly hosed by that. Whenever you look, and now Rick Carlisle is obviously not a developmental coach, but if you've heard anybody talk about him, people like Doc Rivers, who have said that he does not have a style that is specific to him. He has a style that is specific to the team that he is given. That he finds the ways to weaponize and kind of put in a system that feeds his team's strength and limits their weaknesses. Because I think the Doc Rivers quote is, "Whatever team he has is the team that he has."
Yeah.
No, that doesn't really sound like anything, but when you think about it, someone like you who's into coaching, your dad's been into coaching, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole is not a great coaching style. This guy is great at knowing what his players' strengths and weaknesses are, and then playing to those.
Yeah, he's
trying
gonna
to
go. He's gonna.
maximize their efficiency.
Sorry, I didn't. I apologize. I didn't. He's gonna go down as one of the all-time great basketball minds when this is all said and done. Because when you look at the differentiated styles that the three organizations that he took to finals played with, it's the Pistons, and then it's the Mavericks, and then it's this Pacers team. Those are such significantly different teams in terms of how they approach basketball. And
Defensive teams, like teams with one star player, and then the
yeah,
rest of the team
heliocentric
around him.
basketball. Yeah, and now we
Yeah,
have the
now he's
exact
got this.
opposite of that. You have
Yeah,
a player whose usage percentage doesn't even reflect how good of a playmaker he
yeah,
really
and you're
was.
also talking about three different eras.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you got a 2004 Pistons, or 2000, what was that, the
2003.
three. So you got the
Yeah.
Pistons team in 03, you got the Mavericks team in 11, and then you got this Pacers team in 25. Those are three completely different eras of basketball. So yeah, I mean, it's not only like is he a good coach, he's a good coach across ages. I think the era of like dynasties and stuff are kind of done, but like I think that you can be competitive long term, especially if these organizations, if they actually started taking the long view. Not everybody's going to be Popovich, and not everybody's going to be Spolstra or Carlisle, but you also don't have to give up on a coach after 2 or 3 years. You can actually let them develop a culture, and you can see if it's going wrong, but you can actually give it a little bit of time. And like Dagnall, he walks into a team that had just made the playoffs, but then they tear everything back down. So he's left with this, you know, odd mismatched team full of just, players that no one's ever really heard of. He wins 24 games, or I think it was 22, 24. Then he jumps to 42 or 40 and 42. So 40 wins, 57 wins, 68 wins. That's development. That's development over time. And, you have to go through 2 seasons, though, where you lost 58 plus games. 2 seasons in a row. That's not, and you don't have to pull the plug on that because it's an actual plan. They like, speaking to your point, they had an actual organizational plan that they not only shared with the other, front office, but they shared it with Dagnall. They shared it with SGA. If you go back and look through a lot of the interviews, he talks about direct conversations with Clay Bennett, Sam Presti, and Mark Dagnall about where this team is going in the future and how they were building things around him as the central focal point. And obviously, you can see how that's paid off. I mean, nobody knew that SGA was going to be this, but does SGA become this if he's put in any other system or position? It's questionable.
It's a good question. I mean, I do think that as soon as we got to see him in the space that in the spacing that the NBA game provides, some stuff that we could see like nation steps of at college really expanded in his game, even with the Clippers. But it's hard because the reality is no matter what the conversation about his development stands against the backdrop of what the Thunder do best, which is developing young players and really figuring out what their best skill sets are and building those out into a way where they become weaponized at the highest level. And we saw it with Chet, we saw it with J Dub. We've even seen it with Andrew Wiggins and Isaiah Joe kind of at a lower level. Like, this is what the Thunder do. Okay, we know what you can provide us. Now let's make sure that we make that just like the best version of. We saw it with Case and Wallace. Like, they just keep doing it.
The Thunder, that Chet is their only top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And you could go and look at the Pacers. And look at the Pacers.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. Those guys,
yeah.
None of those guys were picked like high lottery.
Yeah, although the Halliburton should have been. It was a weird. Yes. It was a weird draft. I thought I was a big fan of him coming out of that draft, but your point remains the same, and it's all tethered to the exact same conversations.
Did you hear the Kevin McHale story about Halliburton and Boston?
I did not.
So apparently, and I don't know how much truth there is to this, but Boston really wanted to draft Halliburton, and McHale was on the phone with one of the teams in front of him, and they were trying to trade up. And I think somebody told him that Halliburton would not be there when the Celtics were drafting, and McHale misheard him and thought that he said that he was going to be there, so they didn't need to trade up, and so they didn't, and then so they didn't trade up. Halliburton gets taken, and guess who Boston drafted in that draft?
Who's that?
Aaron Neesmith.
Oh, Neesmith. Yeah, yeah,
With Neesmith.
yeah.
So yeah, it was just like I don't know. I don't know if that story is true. It's just something that I heard, but
Wait,
that
so what you're saying? McHale's role was with the Celtics at the time,
yeah, he was with the Celtics, and he was.
but wouldn't it have been Danny Ainge making those
I was talking
decisions?
about Ainge, not McHale.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. Look, the white guy teammates from the same '80s Boston team,
Yeah, I
they're
was
best
talking about
friends.
Kevin McHale for some
It's
reason.
okay. All of a sudden, I was just like, what am I
Oh, Danny
forgetting with
Ainge.
this role
I
there? No,
apologize.
you're totally
You and
fine.
I were both talking about how our brains are mush, and
Yeah, yeah.
this is me having like a not McHale, Danny Ainge. My
What
apologies.
we're here for. The most important thing is we got it right. And to that end, when I was talking about Carlisle, I do want to make sure he went to the Eastern Conference Finals with that Pistons team, not the finals in '03. But I just meant that he was
And then
in
he was
that
replaced with Larry
competitive
Brown.
milieu for a championship even there. Um, in terms of this Thunder group for yourself, obviously all the conversations are going to be about like what is the next step of development and what does the team look like next year. Like, obviously there's a couple things that are really interesting in terms of I think that a backup point guard was one of their issues in some ways. Nikola Topic is a
And
guy
AJ
that,
Mitchell.
yeah, AJ Mitchell's coming back, and obviously you don't need to see him in 2 minute stretches in the finals. But AJ Mitchell was very good to start the year with them. Um, but you can't play 15 players. Like, and so the Thunder, I think, do you foresee any kind of movement on the fringes with some of these guys? Is Isaiah Joe back next year, or do they try to see if they can get some value out of him? Because everybody wants the skill that he has best, and obviously was not terribly important to this playoff run. They signed him to a contract that was very team friendly, I think, in part to give themselves leverage here.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of, I mean, you follow these guys more than anybody. Is there any things that you can kind of see if you're reading the tea leaves here?
Yeah, I mean, so long term, let's just, look this through. So Shea's going to get his extension. So the option is he could sign
$500 million or
well, he could
whatever.
sign a 4-year one for a little bit less next season or this following season, or he can wait a year and he can sign the 5 350. So I think it's
Yeah.
4 293 or 5 350. I'm not sure if that's exactly correct. But yeah, so he's got an option there. They're going to extend Jalen Williams. I think he's going to get the other max position.
Well, he was all NBA, so
He was all NBA, so you're going to have to pay him.
Yeah.
And I think Chet is going to get as much as they can afford to give him under the max. So you're going to lock in your 3 core pieces. So the most obvious person that's going to be a victim of this is going to be Hartenstein, but this was planned.
Yeah, that's why they had the team option on the back end.
The Hartenstein deal was 3 years,
87, I think.
87, 89.
9, yeah, one of those two.
Yeah, something like that. But it's a team option for the 3rd year, which is around the exact same time that the
all those guys hit the books.
Extensions kick in. So this was obviously a short-term rental, and obviously we paid a premium. The Oklahoma City Thunder paid a premium to get his services, and obviously it was well worth it because you end up winning a championship. Then you go down the line, and after that it's Lou Dort at $17.5 million, who I think has proven himself to be an essential part of this team. And plus, let me tell you something else about trading Lou Dort. I don't want to see him guarding SGA ever.
That's a damn good point.
And that is the one thing you can think about, like, well, we've got Cason Wallace, we've got Alex Caruso. Maybe Dort's a little expendable at the number that he's at. If I see Lou Dort guarding SGA, I will cry heavy, heavy tears. It will be very hard to watch. And then, so that's Dort 17.5. You have Wiggins, I believe, is at 14 million a year, and I think Joe's at 12. So those are your tradable contract guys. And then when you get a little bit further down the list, you've still got guys on their rookies deals, guys on 2-way contracts. So they've got flexibility outside the top 3. Now, it's also a matter of the team being willing to spend. And the reason that I am positive that they will be willing to do that is because of the $1 billion NBA arena that they're going to be building right next door to the Paycom Center. So that they want to get completed by the
Yeah.
28th season. You need faces and superstar faces that people recognize
And
to be.
toilets. Make sure you have the toilets. Anyways, keep
Hey,
going.
hey, the mayor of Oklahoma City went to a Clippers game earlier this year to go look at the Intuit Dome to get ideas. I hope that he saw all those toilets and
Yeah.
goes, more toilets.
Yeah.
You know what? People can make jokes about that, but if you're waiting a long line in the bathroom in the middle of a game, we've all been there, and it's annoying.
Well, and kind of to your point, I mean, obviously I was saying it tongue in cheek, but Bomber's entire conceptualization of how they built that arena was to expedite the
What's in
process of
seats?
people. Yes. So obviously having as many bathrooms as possible limits times of people standing around. So it was actually
It's
ingrained into the
smart.
entire
Yeah.
concept. Yeah. Like that arena has been by everybody's except for the cost of parking and the general location, everybody has said it is an amazing place to go see a basketball game. So
Absolutely. Well, and then you can look at the innovation of the of
the
the
wall,
wall
yeah,
because there's a significant drop off when people go to shoot free throws in the Clippers arena versus like the league average.
yeah,
It's significant. It's like
yeah,
7%
it
lower.
mattered.
It
Yeah,
matters. So like if you are a team that's competitive and Oklahoma City, we've already seen their fan base. They wear the shirts. They
yeah.
get involved. They stand the entire time. It's a very collegiate atmosphere because most of them are used to going to college football games as their
And,
form of entertainment.
And I'll tell you, I actually, one of the things I always loved about baseball stadiums is those kind of unique quirks that provide a legitimate home court advantage. Now, obviously, look, we're playing within the confines of 94 by 50 feet. That's not changing. But all the other little stuff that you can do to make the arena not just aesthetically unique, but actually provide different competitive balance. I love that. Like, I would love for more arenas to kind of lean into that. I love when you're at I was going to say Staples, but now whatever it is, Coinbase or
So
crypto or that dramatic lighting that they do. I always think that that's really
it's
cool.
very Hollywood.
Yeah, like those. Each arena having those little different touches, I think, is a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. So like encouraging that more as we build these megaplexes, I
Yeah.
think is awesome.
And I
So
also think it's way more fun to watch a game when, from different angles. So, if say you're mid court, but you're 30 rows up, or if you're in one of the little corner sections, I like watching the games from different point of view from the arena and finding out like where the best place is. So like usually I like the corners, like the diagonal corners where you can kind of see across the arena. I,
yeah.
I I prefer to watch games that way because for my money, it's the best view. Being
You
how
did you used to play NBA Live as a kid?
uh, I'm not sure if I ever played NBA Live. I was more of an NBA Jam guy.
Okay, so NBA Live, which I'm dating myself a little bit. I mean, it continued to exist, but once 2K really got going, it just kind of got
Mhm.
eliminated. I think they tried to have, but one of the angles that was like the things that they did is they had that diagonal kind of angle to play at that I remember a lot of people playing online. And
Yeah.
so, anyways, yeah,
Well, and this is, I'm glad you brought up the Clippers because whenever they were building their new arena, which is one of the main reasons they re-signed Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden, was because they needed marquee names to put, people in the seats, get
yeah.
them to
Although
come to
they
the
they
game.
kind of they kind of didn't re-sign Paul George for that because they started
Well,
their first year without him. But that is why they initially brought all those guys there.
initially brought those guys in. I mean, that
They
was the
wanted
plan
marquee
long
appeal.
term.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like everyone wants to point at the Harden trade, and that's such ancient history. It was 13 years ago. Like
But it
ownership's
is
learned.
it's yeah, exactly. It's such an ideological inflection point for the organization that you do understand why people bring it up as often as they do. Because one, the what if factor was there, but two, it was a lesson. And I think that that very lesson is exactly why what you're saying about them being willing to spend and them making sure they keep up those three guys as their core locked up. Not that they may have not, anyways, but now you have the scar tissue for making the mistake before that I think only further kind of calcifies this ideology of we're going to keep running this forward for as long as we can.
Yeah, and and another difference between the 2012 Thunder and the 2025 Thunder, these guys really seem to like each other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that seems really, I mean, I know that sounds stupid and naive, but like SGA sharing his finals MVP trophy with Jalen Williams and being like, we don't get here without him. This is just as much his as it is mine. I don't think that's lip service. And SGA, then again, he was talking about them all being brothers, that they watch movies together, that they go shopping together, that they spend all their free time. It's like a fraternity.
I mean, the post game interviews are the best, and it is really reflective of a tight knit group, right? Like these guys are very intentionally issuing the opportunity to glad stand for themselves by bringing everybody else to show what they are. That matters. Look. People can try to act like it's performative, but I think really it's a reflection of a group of guys that enjoy goofing off and being around each other and spending time together. And your point, it's not superficial because the reality is, particularly when we're talking about young developing egos, those guys having this type of friendship and bond matters so much for how they continue to grow together versus that first group of the Thunder where we just knew there was so much kind of butting heads in terms of whose team it was and what the direction was going to be. Those things become greater schisms and bigger problems as player profiles increase. It's part of that whole, the sickness of more, the Pat Riley thing. You guys have a situation where all these guys giving each other credit and mattering really helps tamp down the ego inflation that happens as guys get more important and people are more in their ears, and sponsorship deals become reflective of a player's, EQ and all these things. Like that stuff all really matters.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up, both about Indiana and about Oklahoma City, because they're small markets. They both also draft based on character. They look at these guys like it's a part of the way they assess these players. Like, is this guy a good person? Is this guy somebody that we can, you know, grow with, and that isn't going to be a headache to the organization? That's part of this too. And you know, Oklahoma City drafts guys because like they draft these guys with less ego because they need guys that also are more likely to stick around in Oklahoma City, who
Yeah.
don't care about the market in which they play, or they don't care that it's not the clubbiest city or the highest shopping city, that that it's not Miami and New York and LA, that they can't be wooed by such dazzling lights,
Yeah.
because that matters to some players, but to some guys it doesn't. And they've they've made it a point to try and draft guys that don't have that fit that mold.
I had an interesting conversation about a week ago with some friends who we've had like a basketball stream forever. And they were lamenting the fact that they felt like Shea lacks superstar charisma. And one, I kind of disagree. I think that there's a lot of different ways to get to that, and the unflappable cool and the steady kind of element to both how he plays and how he communicates is something I enjoy. I find it to be something that instead of that bombast, which we all enjoy as well. And, of course, we brought Anthony Edwards into the conversation, and they were just talking about how much Anthony Edwards pops. And I was saying that, yeah, but sometimes Ant is too much. It's too much. And we need it to not be that. And Shea, because of that personality, just meshes and melds perfectly with the city he plays in terms of
Yes.
not need, like all those other parts. That stuff just, we don't value enough in general, all those components and elements that have to interlock for an organization to have sustained success. We don't.
I know that most people, and we don't have to make this a whole political thing. I know the way that people see Oklahoma as a very red state, very conservative, very religious. That's been called the buckle of the Bible Belt. I grew up in Oklahoma. I know all of these things. Oklahoma City and the people of Oklahoma, the people who reside there, they're actually a very deeply populist uh, community. They vote like for like in a utilitarian style. But like when they vote for politicians, yes, they vote Republican. But when they're like when they're presented with actual issues, with nuanced political questions or state questions that get on the bill, you'll see that they actually vote in a very populist manner, and they vote to kind of help bring people up in their community. I remember one of the last years that I was there in Oklahoma, there was a vote that would have made drug charges, but instead of making them felonies, it was going to make them misdemeanors, and then taking the money from jailing those guys to putting that money into rehab facilities instead. That's not a conservative state. That's a populist state that's got a conservative bend to them. When they see an R by their name, they vote for it. But that's I just want to make that clear to people is that it's a very deeply tight-knit community in the sense of no one thinks about us other than ourselves. So we've all just been like, well, since we're all here, we might as well take care of each other. So that is the ethos that you'll find from a lot of Oklahomans. They are, they don't expect much and they're grateful for what they do have. It's just kind of the way that the people of that state are kind of raised, and that's the expectations they're kind of given from birth. So, in Oklahoma City is growing. It is there's a lot of cool things that are going in, parks, and they're going to have some of the Olympic stuff coming up in the Olympic games that are in 2028. They're growing and growing and growing. The city's expanding. They're looking to expand their entertainment districts. It's trying to become a big league city, and I think the crown jewel that's going to be at the heart of Oklahoma City is going to be that Thunder team and that arena, and something that we can all collectively as fans have pride in and say we belong to this organization, we belong to this culture, and it's what we make of it. And like I said, it's a very collegiate atmosphere because that's all the sports they really had to root for. There's not any other major professional franchise team. And then, most people that I knew in Oklahoma, they were always Cowboys fans. So what do they know about rooting for a good team with a good culture?
That you know what? This whole time I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful. You're unfolding this lovely cultural tapestry, blah blah blah, and then just at the end, it's boom, just ouch.
Take a shot at the Dallas Cowboys.
Felt so unnecessary.
It was unnecessary.
But look, sometimes when we cook, it's like the bear, and it's loud and frenetic and crazy, and sometimes it's very quiet and beautiful. This was like a lovely French meal, and I appreciated it until the dessert I could have done without. It was stinky cheese to finish. I just wanted to
point out people, I know what their expectation and their thought process about Oklahoma is. I've lived in North Carolina for the last 5 years. When I tell people I'm from Oklahoma, their reactions are basically one of two. It's like, ew, why would you live there? And then two, I've never even heard of anyone from there. You're the first person I've ever met from Oklahoma. Those are literally my two reactions.
There's an interesting cultural relevance too in terms of Indiana and Oklahoma, and kind of the big city version of those states versus the state in general, and a lot, obviously being kind of red states, but these teams being in the NBA, which we always associate with being so multicultural and more of a liberal environment, and the reality that none of these
social justice playing more important roles there. Yes.
And no state, even the ones that I will gladly have negative things to say about, is a monolith, right? And the major city centers, generally speaking, and also not just that. Like I appreciate what you were saying about the populist voting and stuff like that, just in terms of the conversation of Oklahoma. I think we've probably. Do you have any more you want to talk about the Thunder?
No, I just, congratulations to all the Thunder fans out there who listen to this podcast and who check us out on YouTube. Enjoy this championship. The parade was today. It was awesome. I guess the one thing I would say is I've never heard Aaron Wiggins speak that much.
Yeah, that was funny. Your post, I saw that.
And it was thrilling. That guy, he looked like a passer on like Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
He was like, it was like a revival in there. Like nobody else could follow up his energy. It was like following Jimi Hendrix. They were like, I don't want to go after that guy. So, congratulations to Aaron Wiggins. I swear to God, man, my posts on Threads was like, I've only ever seen him be focused or bemused.
Bemused, yeah.
That's really like his face just kind of like he doesn't portray his emotions on the court at all. And he just let it all out during that speech. If you haven't seen it, please go check out some clips of Aaron Wiggins at the arena earlier today. It's thrilling. It was exciting. So congratulations, OKC. Do you want to talk a little bit more about Indiana?
I mean, I don't. From here? Yeah, I don't think that there's a lot to say. Next season probably becomes, a bit of a lost season, which I think the one
Are
thing
you
that
sure?
yes, and this is why, because when I say a lost season, it's not that I don't think that they can't still be competitively in the mix as a second tier team in the East, but Halliburton just matters so much to how they play the game, and I don't see what they can do. Now we're going to see there's going to be some stuff that's interesting. I think one, that this probably means that they're going to work much harder to keep Mathurin,
I was
because
just about to bring that up. I'm so
yeah,
glad you did. Yep.
you've got to his extension, he's extension eligible now as a rookie. They're going to have to figure out keeping, and the reality is it's the smart asset play with him anyways, because he's continued to show enough stuff, including just that. I mean, his give a shit quotient at the end of that game was really admirable, but
He had
also
over 22 points.
yeah, I think this team offensively becomes a little bit more of his team, but that changes the identity of how they play basketball, because Mathurin just doesn't keep the ball popping that way. Same with TJ McConnell. I love TJ. The assist stuff and his ability to control the ball is comparable to Halliburton in terms of an assist to turnover ratio, but TJ's got to do a lot more on-ball work to break down guys and do certain things instead of keep it popping and moving.
And his inability to shoot threes is really going to limit him. I mean,
yeah,
it was impressive what he did in the finals, but that's not going to work over an 82 game season.
It's really amazing how slow the process to get the catapult up is for his jump shot from the 3-point line, and how quick he releases it off the dribble.
I'm trying to get my hands in the shot. This is where he releases his jump shot from.
Yeah, and you got to drop low and squat. But that being said, off the dribble, it's boom, and he's just straight into it. Now, obviously, he had to adapt that because it's the only way he was going to get the shot up.
He's getting buckets over Chet Holmgren, who had 5 blocks. He was getting buckets over everybody. He had that run for 10 minutes in the finals where he was the only one who scored.
The third quarter became the TJ McConnell zone in multiple games in this series in a way that was incredible.
I was cursing his name like it was Bucky fucking Dent.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm a Red Sox fan. And I'm just like TJ fucking McConnell is what he became in my house that night. Well, also 2 nights before. And then in game 6 as well. Like, I'm sorry, in game 6.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. The guy was.
And he lit you up in game 5 too.
Yep. It was hard. It was a hard watch. But yeah, so I was going to say that I thought that Mathurin was going to be the person who benefited the most from the Halliburton injury, because now he becomes essential for them as an offensive generator.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're probably going to need to sign another point guard short term.
Yeah, it's just that their financial situation's not great because they've got to figure out Mathurin and Turner in this offseason. On top of, I believe, Halliburton's extension, if it's not already kicks in.
I think it kicked in.
Yeah, so the money's going to get a little tough for them, and there's going to be some decisions on the fringes that they're smart enough to figure it out. They saw I don't love Jarris Walker. A lot of people really do. This is a guy who was their other high lottery pick who played some good minutes for him this season and probably would have been featured in some of these playoff series.
I haven't sold my stock on him yet, but I need to see something.
But I expect next year they're going to give him a lot of room to explore the space, because they're going to have to figure out, now you got to look, they had 8 guys that averaged double figures in the NBA finals. That speaks to how much depth of scoring talent they have. I just don't know if they have the guy, with Siakam being so reliant upon distribution to get into his stuff, just who's the guy when you need a bucket? And they had that answer before. We knew that. Halliburton had become that guy, maybe not as much as everybody wanted him to be, but you can't have the offseason or the postseason that he had, really the second half through the postseason that he had, of big shot creation and big shot making, without everybody knowing that you can be relied on to be that player. They are going to have to figure a lot of that out.
Well, let's play this game real quick. We already know, so you've got Siakam, Nembhard, Mathurin, Turner. I'm assuming that all 4 of those guys are obviously, they're locked in, but they're also staying. So that's not a question.
Yeah, Turner's the one who's the question. I
still think that I think he's a pacer lifer, especially after this season.
I'm inclined to agree because of just how much he's been how long? Well, he's the longest tenured Pacer for them, right? And we've been hearing about him in trade rumors forever. But if somebody decides to come over the top and make a really ridiculous offer, it's just going to be interesting to see how it works out for them financially.
Well, I guess I'm just curious. So, like, okay, how let's play the percentage game, and I'm going to ask you, like, what's your percentage you think they're going to be back on this Pacers team next season?
All of them would be you. We can skip it because of those guys. I would
No, I'm
expect all
not.
of them to be back.
I was going down the. I'm
Oh,
skipping.
then I apologize.
I'm going
Okay.
down the line.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm going to go with let's go with the first one that makes you think. So, we just talked about Jarris Walker. You say he's going to have his role expanded. What does that mean for Obi Toppin? What's the percentage you think he's going to be? Because he's good, and he was very good for the Pacers. And he's a guy that a lot of teams could use. He has a very high trade value. What's your percent chance you think he's on the team?
I mean, I think Toppin comes back because the way that he plays basketball actually has more value to the Pacers than it does other organizations. And the positive steps that he made as a general defender, he's still a weak spot there, but he played significantly better as the season increased. That's cause for encouragement if you're the Pacers, knowing that you're going to have to rely on him a little bit more.
Let's Thomas Bryant.
I mean, I think it's kind of inconsequential, but I don't know what his cap number is, but I wouldn't expect he didn't matter enough to what they did. He had moments where he couldn't be played on the floor. Tony Bradley gave them more physicality, which they needed anyways.
He was the next person I was going to bring up. Tony Bradley, which I still think they need a backup center, even though.
I think Bradley just ends up in that same kind of mix of, the other thing is that Wiseman and Jackson are both also coming back from torn Achilles.
I was just about to bring these guys up.
Since Jesus Christ, 3 Pacers tore their Achilles this season.
Yep, Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, 2 guys that
on top of Halliburton
have been featured very heavily in this series against Oklahoma City.
Jackson's a bigger concern to me coming off the injury just because his game is more based on his athleticism because he's a slight framed 5 who really gets out into the open court. And kind of does some of the stuff that Obi Toppin does, although he's a better rebounder and shot blocker. So I'm more concerned with him. But I think you're looking at them continuing what they've done, and just it'll be like Wiseman, Bradley, and Turner as like the center rotation probably.
Yeah, then you got to throw in some Ben Shepherd minutes as well. So that's also the next. They have a plethora of guards: Nembhard, Mathurin, Ben Shepherd. These guys. To give relief to Halliburton throughout the playoffs, just like Oklahoma City did with Shea, they had Dort bringing it up, Jalen Williams bringing it up, Chet bringing it up, and then this team you've got plenty of guards who can handle the ball. Nembhard, I thought he did a really good job of getting them into their offense after Halliburton went down.
Yeah, I'm. The thing about Nembhard that we all have to just kind of keep in mind is we now know that there's a different version of regular season and postseason Nembhard. If they can get postseason Nembhard to play during the regular season in terms of what his efficiency numbers look like as a shooter, then this Pacers group will be better. Like they'll be better than what I'm expecting them to be. I don't think that Nembhard at that level of competition and how hard he has to play can scale that up over 82 games in a way that's going to move the needle enough for the Pacers versus what I'm kind of expecting to happen with them next year.
Okay, interesting. Is there anything else on the Pacers that you want to touch on before we get to some NBA news recapping?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, it'll be interesting to see what they try to do. I mean, they're going to have to find another guard. I think, like you said, I think they have to find another like a pure point guard. I just don't think McConnell or Nembhard can be your full-time number one. We know McConnell can't because he can't play at that level of energy for enough minutes to stay on the floor as your starter. And then for as good of a defensive player as he is, he's much more attackable against starting size. Much in the way that we've talked about with Darius Garland, even though he stands up better with his strength, just because of the size limitations. So it'll be interesting to see what guards are out there that, a veteran minimum guy. I don't know how they make the money work, but Mike Conley's probably going to be out on the market. That might be somebody that's interesting to look at as kind of a steadying force, a guy who plays a brand of basketball in terms of being unselfish. I know he looked cooked towards the end of the season. I'm not saying Mike Conley's the guy that leads you, but somebody of that kind of level of veteran player.
You know how I feel about table setting point guards. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love a Mike Conley in like 25 minutes a game. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. If he wants to come back and they can't find any room for him on the Wolves because they're trying to move on and develop Anthony Edwards as their more point
Well,
guard.
Rob Dillingham probably is
Dillingham.
Gonna,
yeah, that's fine. I would still love to see Mike Conley in the league. I have no problem with that. Okay. Everything we covered on the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and one last time to put the bow on it. Thank you, NBA. Thank you for a wonderful finals. This was an awesome season. Obviously, injuries became too much of a fixture at points that we wouldn't have liked. But Tom Haberstroh, who we've talked about, this man is a god to me in a lot of ways. Wrote an article today talking about why this finals deserved an asterisk by the Thunder, and then talked about why every finals that's ever happened has an asterisk in some level. And it was just to make the point that the whole thing is stupid.
It's
dumb.
It's dumb. It's dumb. Okay, if we're gonna do the complaints thing, okay, we already complained about the NBA on ESPN. We did the halftime show sucks. The ratings people, those people suck. So by the way, Game 7 averaged 16.4 million viewers, the most since 2019. And topped out at almost 20 million viewers during the peak of the game.
And that is with them suffering from a significant viewership loss because of exactly what we're talking about. It would have been a higher share had it been all the players we thought it would have been.
Yeah. And also, if you've ever heard Adam Silver talk, and my friends laughed at me for saying this, but they don't look in terms of Nielsen ratings anymore. That's a thing of the past.
Yeah, feels a little dated, so I'm glad
it's a very dated method because we have streaming services and we have people, a lot of young people who just kind of watch the game in short clips online on YouTube Shorts and Reels and TikToks. That's the way so the NBA judges their viewership based on eyeballs. And as far as this season went, it was like a 50% increase in like viewership across social media.
Yeah, they track engagement as kind of a catch-all. Engagement,
exactly. So the NBA is fine with what they got. And the ratings ended up being good after a slow start to the series. It ended up being an incredible series and more people tuned in. So it actually turns out that good basketball is all that matters.
Yeah.
Put on a good, and then let's talk about the fact, I guess this is a compliment wrapped in a criticism, but thank you for bringing back the national anthem and the introduction of the starting lineups. It never should have gone away. But it's a cool part of the NFL nails this pomp and circumstance stuff. They nail the pageantry of sports. And the NBA is like, let's not do that. Let's not have the finals logo with the cursive writing. Let's not have Kristen Chenoweth did one of the best renditions of the national anthem that you will ever hear.
I also think that things exist in kind of these shared circles, right? Where at one point, the NBA thought that their best move was try to promote the guys that were covering the game, which is why they eschewed those opening things for more of kind of the talking heads just leading straight into the game. Well, people all tuned out from that and also made your point in several spaces saying, why don't we have this anymore? So I think there was kind of these mutual circumstances that happened where everybody's tuning out because you had garbage leading into the game. And now everybody had this nostalgic thing that you brought back in when you did that. Keep it. We all like it. Like we want to know. Yeah. It's funny because I always make notes of the starting lineups, and it's so much easier when you announce them than I've got to immediately, while the jump's happening, pause it, make sure I'm recognizing everybody. I mean, obviously they give the quick rundown, but it's nice. Like these guys earned getting there. They should get their moment to be introduced on the national stage. Yeah, we should see it, and it's fun.
You want to know how you get people to remember the names of players that maybe don't have high a profile? Maybe announce them before every game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is our NBA Finals recap. Congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Congratulations to the Pacers and their fan base on an incredible season. I'm so sorry for the way that it ended with the injury to Halliburton and with the loss, but I have full faith in the Indiana organization and their fans that they will support this team just as much next year, if not more so, waiting for Tyrese Halliburton to come back. And still one hell of a season. They deserve all the credit in the world. Um, Love that. Love when two small market teams can have their day in the sun. That's really nice. So we should get to the rest of the NBA roundup that's been going on. Do you want to start with the Kevin Durant trade? It's happened a couple of days ago, right before Oklahoma City went to play their game, which, by the way, Kevin Durant, can you let the Thunder have one day without you?
I mean, there, look. Obviously, KD doesn't get to be the one making the decision of when the trade comes through, and it's a complete reflection about the expediency necessary for the pick to convey because the draft is on Wednesday night.
I know.
But that is objectively funny.
It's
like,
funny.
like the fact that this man still got to cast his shadow on the organization in such a funny, weird way, and how they'll all be kind of forever inextricably linked is pretty hilarious, including the fact he now ends up to the team where James Harden was once traded.
And Russell Westbrook once was.
And Russell Westbrook, yes. Like the Thunder the former Thunder greats love to end up Rockets. We might, I mean, you asked the question, but we're deep enough into it, we might as well talk about the deal. First and foremost, you and I had been talking about KD to the Rockets from the first day we started this podcast.
Yeah, it made too much sense.
It made too much sense. Now I am still in full agreement with Raphael Stone waiting until the season had ended for them. Just because of what the growth needed to look like and really evaluating what some of the pieces were for this team. Look, I will not miss Jalen Green in a Rockets uniform. I'm not a Jalen Green guy. That's just the reality of it. I have to imagine because of the positional overlap with Beal, Booker, and Green is just kind of a placeholder till he gets moved again, unless this is precipitating a much bigger Booker deal. But the idea of having to play those three guys minutes together and figure that out and all that just is
the report from Kevin O'Connor is that Bradley Beal will either be traded or bought out. So he will not be with the team no matter what.
Let's make something very clear. Bradley Beal will not be traded. So we need to how? What is the benefit for him? Why would he even look with the no trade clause and with his contract? What is and where is the place that makes sense for him to be dealt? Like, why would he? He's not going.
The only place I can think of is a place that's been floated before. You're not going to like to hear it.
If you say Chicago, I'm going to hang up.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like his college coach was Billy Donovan, and if the Bulls, I don't know why they would do it.
I obviously I have zero intel. I think more importantly, the money makes absolutely no sense with them about to have to open the bank for Giddey. The only way that they would be doing this if there's some part of them that they've decided that they're going to punt on Kobe White once his contract comes up. But still, it's just like Bradley Beal doesn't move the marker on the floor, and he holds you back so much. No. I'm not. This is not even a kill the messenger thing. This is just me talking through.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense for why Chicago
would be the Wade parts of that.
So and I don't know. I just don't. Maybe that's what the second round picks were for, and the number 10 pick in the draft because they weren't getting better offers. But was that a way to try and look, we'll dump a bunch of assets with him to get us off his contract? Is that the reason for the second round picks that they got?
I don't think so. I think that they are right now in asset accumulation mode and are going to try to see what deals they can make on top of this. Them packaging Green and the number 10 for something can make a lot of sense. I'm also not going to be surprised at all if they keep the 10th pick because they have to start to build out this team with affordable contracts and youthful skill players. And this is a draft that at number 10, you might end up hitting on a guy that could end up being, I don't know if there's a superstar in here, but let's understand that who has been drafted 11 and 16 over the last few years. We're talking about guys like Şengün and guys like Tyrese Halliburton and stuff. There are going to be a player or two that ends up hitting in that range. And if you're the Suns, if you believe in your player development. Now, the other problem with that is up until recently, James Jones was running the organization and openly admitted that the draft was not an area of focus for them. So they're probably having to do some catch up. I have also been at several basketball things lately where the Suns seem to have more scouts than anybody else at them. So that might also be that reasoning. Um, the other part of this deal for me that I think is important to talk about, and then we can kind of we're going to sort of get on the Rockets here anyways. Dylan Brooks is an asset. People can feel however they want, and it's still so wild. I had somebody lose their crap on me on Threads, and of course I was not in the mood to keep my firewalls up, so I ended up arguing with him where he was just talking about how Dylan Brooks is not a good defender, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't even second team All-NBA. Well, first of all, he has been before. Saying he's not a top 10 defender in the league may not be a hot take, but he's probably a top 20 defender. And in terms of how he establishes as a point of attack defender and a guy that gives you that competitive edge, there's going to be teams in the league that want that if the Suns don't want it. And if they do want it, it's exactly what they need in terms of trying to establish some type of defensive identity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look up some of the mocks right now. I just want to see.
Oh, who's in that range?
Like who the other people think they're looking at. I mean, they're obviously looking at anybody with size.
Yeah.
So, at the Ringer, they have Noah Esunige?
Noah Essengay, who it's funny, I'm literally in the middle of doing my work for Noah Essengay, and if he ends up with the Suns, I will lose it.
No, that's who the Ringer has mocked into the Suns at 10. On ESPN, they have Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina. Another guy that's a power forward center combo kind of guy who's about 6'7", but with a 7-foot wingspan. Someone lengthy and rangy. So, I mean, obviously, I think size is going to be important for Phoenix. I don't know if they can afford to not use that draft pick, but maybe you're right. They do use it to package it with somebody else.
Yeah, because you look at the roster right now, there's no way that this is the group that they're going into the season with.
No. They have 5 guys that play shooting guard.
Yeah, so there's going to be another move here. I don't have any information here. Does some type of combination of look, if the Hornets can't move up to get VJ Edgecombe because they really want VJ Edgecombe, but if they're not able to get him, does some combination of 10 Jalen Green and a first-round pick start to interest you in the Alonzo? I always do this LaMelo Ball conversation.
No, it doesn't move me. But no.
If you're the Hornets and have decided you're done,
the Hornets, I think the Hornets would say yes.
But if you're the Suns, can't you talk yourself into pairing Booker and LaMelo?
You can. Okay. Defensively, the backcourt's a sieve, but
that is a damn good point.
But I mean, I guess that's why you get, Brooks and Edgecombe, and maybe you take a flyer on a center that's available. It's not like there's not a ton of big men I know it's not going to be a great free agent class, but there's fringe guys, I guess you could make a move for, but they wouldn't be able to get Edgecombe. That Edgecombe would have already been gone in that scenario anyways, right. Which is why because I think that most of what you're hearing right now is the Hornets are really in love with VJ Edgecombe, so I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up. But I think if the Hornets aren't able to move up, I'm just interested to see what their kind of decision making is going to be here at that guard position. Now, the Hornets are drafting at what slot again? Are they 6th? I think they're 6th.
Yeah.
No, wait, that might be the Wizards.
Oh, you're right. It is. You're looking at the mock draft.
The Hornets are 4th.
The Hornets are 4th. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'll say, and then ESPN has Colin Knippel going to them. So but the Ringer has Edgecombe.
Yeah, well, so if Edgecombe is probably off the board number 3 at Philadelphia, and if
so you think that Ace Bailey's the one that's taking the tumble?
Oh, just so we're clear, Ace Bailey is 100% taking a dive. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Ace Bailey worked out for as many NBA teams as I have.
Yeah, I've heard that he's been getting some pretty poor advice, but I've also heard that it has nothing to do with him as a person, and it has everything to do with who is guiding him.
Yeah, he's the guard at Auburn, whose name I'm just blanking out on right now because my brain is also muffed. Cooper, excuse me. His dad is the one that's been kind of guiding Ace Bailey over the last few years. But the other problem is The interview stuff wasn't apparently great with him. Ace Bailey is very much going to be a developmental project. So the
I heard that
conversation,
he has a preference on where he goes.
well, the talk is that he's trying to push himself to Brooklyn at 7, which is why he did what he did. That he may
Or the
already have.
Wizards at 6. So he actually
Yeah,
apparently was okay with that as well, which is strange.
I've heard kind of conflicting stuff about that. I
Yeah,
think it would be.
I wasn't sure about
Yeah,
that either.
I would be kind of if you're the Wizards, I would take Ace Bailey because I think at 6, if Ace Bailey becomes the player that his skill set presents as possibly becoming, he's a steal at that point. And I know Ryan Russillo always makes this point. It is a very valid one where we talk about, oh, a guy at 3 is overvalued and the guy at 6 is a steal. But it's kind of the reality about how we evaluate some of these guys. I mean, I talked about with Modest Pizelis last year at where the Bulls got him at 11. That's great value. I wouldn't have liked drafting him at number 6. There's just a thing to that in terms of some of the other players that end up available in that conversation. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I do think
we
Ace takes.
We kind of got into draft.
I didn't even mean to do that. Let's bring it back into the Suns.
Yeah,
Rockets
let's go to the Rocket side of this because I do want to get to some other things. Because there was another trade that happened today that we need to talk about. But Kevin Durant on the Rockets without having to give up any really valuable player or asset is pretty impressive. Well done by Raphael Stone. And that puts them in a great position that if there was another player that they want to make a run at, they still have the assets and the players and the picks that they can, make another move if they wanted to. But for right now, as is, you're going to get some more Tari Eason. You're going to get a hell of a lot more Cam Whitmore, who kind of fell out of rotation. You're probably going to get some Reed Shepherd, more Jabari Smith, Kevin Durant, double skinny big lineup.
Oh man, watching those two guys out on the perimeter is going to be fun. Yeah, they have a
Alperen Şengün and KD together.
Yeah,
that's fun.
The 2-man game with Şengün's passing and Durant's movement in short, quick spaces, like those little quick V cuts and stuff with Durant coming off things where Şengün is delivering is going to be something beautiful to watch. Steven Adams and Durant and our boy Dodger in Dallas made this point. Steven Adams and Kevin Durant coming back together is going to be fun to watch because Adams just setting those screens for him and those. There's a lot to like because Kevin Durant gives you everything that you needed offensively for the Rockets.
Do the Rockets need a backup point guard? Because I've heard a number 0 that declined his option in Denver. You just want to get Russ and Steve back together in a Rockets uniform.
That would be wild. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell.
Kevin Durant and Russ back together again, baby.
Yeah, I expect to see a ton of and just so we remember, Russell Westbrook's number 4 now.
He was only number 4 in Denver, I believe.
Yeah. I just mean because we were talking about the 0 thing, anyways. He's probably not going back to 0, considering what we just saw.
Keep 4, man. Keep 4. Stay safe.
Yeah. I expect them to really, and it was actually in Summer League last year, but I expect to see Reed Shepherd being used a ton. I do think that so many people unfairly talked about Reed Shepherd's development getting stunted in this situation, and I think that that's this kind of unnecessary hyperbole that we keep attaching to young player development. Like, I don't know. I mean, I do know it just has to do with teams are tired of developing players and then maybe losing the asset. But it's really silly to think a guy that was 19 being able to watch players play at that level with that defensive intensity probably didn't benefit in terms of his growth. Would have loved to have seen him hit the floor more. He didn't. That's just the truth of it. But I don't think Reed Shepherd is a guy who really thinks the game at a high level and is a very competitive player, comes out of that without figuring out, okay, this is what I need to do. These are the steps I need to take. This is the part.
Like these coaches aren't telling them, this is what you need to do to see the floor.
Yes.
Like Dagnall called it eating your broccoli before you have your Skittles.
I like that.
You gotta and he was describing Trey Mann.
Can we just talk about this guy was a former elementary school teacher, and that just feels like it comes through and through with that analogy.
Straight from first graders to NBA champions. But also, I mean, he talked about that, but with Trey Mann, who's now with Charlotte. Trey Mann, like there's a lot of stuff that they like. They're like, he's a good scorer. You know what he doesn't do? He doesn't play defense very well. And we
Yeah,
told him, this is the stuff you have to do. If you want to see the floor and you want to be on, you want to be a part of this rotation, you need to be a better defender. And, he took those words to heart. Now, with Trey Mann, he's, maybe never going to be a plus defender, but he can find ways because he's so good offensively. He found a role in Charlotte and he can
yeah.
continue to have that role. That was another one of the NBA news that his back injury is fixed. So congratulations to Trey Mann. Glad to have you back. But he's going to have a role if he, and that's kind of what we're talking about now. So Shepherd, the reason that he wasn't trusted by Ime Udoka was because he wasn't a very good defender. And you're right, he's a rookie. He didn't see the game at a high level. He maybe doesn't see it in the dimensions in which these veteran players see it. And Udoka went with a very heavily veteran lineup. Van Vliet, Dylan Brooks, those guys close. They have Jeff Green on the team. He got
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah. Now that being said, I mean, Amen Thompson in the second year was maybe their best player to close the season, but Amen
Sure.
Thompson has the
Well,
physical
they
attributes
have
that.
so many young guys. They can't not play them.
Well, it's not just that. Like Reed Shepard's game is more based on his ability to think, read, and react. Amen Thompson's game is based on superlative athleticism. One
Yes.
thing doesn't need to develop for a guy to be impactful as much as the other does. And Shepard will get there because I trust him as a smarter player. I really came around on Shepard, who I wasn't as big on coming out of college. I don't know that he's ever going to be an all-star, but a Mark Price kind of level of impact. And
Yeah.
the thing that was tough with him last season too, and this is part of the conversations about where it hurt his development, is there was confidence issues. But you know what? What young player doesn't have to face that hard, cold slap of reality once they hit the NBA level? He'll get there.
Absolutely.
It's fine.
Yeah. Well, no,
Going
and I
back,
think no. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to kind of the structural components of this for the Rockets, I do have concerns about what Tari Eason looks like when you scale up because he's a guy that has a lot of nagging injuries because of how he plays. And he's a guy who will make 5 plays that just make you go, oh my God. But he also has some mental lapses that are going to become more conspicuous as he's on the floor more. But I'm excited to see more of Tari Eason because I love watching that dude when he's at his top. And I do, as I said on Threads, look, the Rockets have enough dogs, but losing Dylan Brooks is going to matter to the mental toughness and the day-to-day approach of this Rockets team because as somebody who covered them some for half of last season, you just heard them talk a lot about how, much like Luguentz Dort, this is a guy that every day competes and plays at such a high intense level that if you don't meet that, you get ground underneath it. And that establishes culture. That's why the Rockets paid FVV, Fred VanVleet, and Brooks the money they did as players that were going to set a tone emotionally and in terms of an approach level. And you just lose that. Now, the thought, of course, is these Rockets players are starting mature and hopefully they've already, pulled that into their own approach to the game, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think there was a Kevin Durant size hole in the Rockets offense last year, and he, Zach Lowe has always described him as the most malleable superstar that we've ever had. He fits on every team in every way. It's not like at any point in his career he could make sense on your team. So Kevin Durant's going to be the closer for them, the offensive weapon. The guy averaged 25 points a game. He shot 50% from the field, shot 40% from 3. He's done that the last 3 seasons in a row. He's a remarkably consistent offensive player. He's lost a little bit of his bounce, a little bit of his athleticism. He's gotten older. He's not the defensive-minded guy that he used to be, but he doesn't need to be on this team. He's got Thompson, he's got Whitmore, he's got Eason, he's got all these guys that can play defense around him.
And he is still a very smart team defender. Like
Yeah.
he was the Suns' best defensive player, which of course isn't saying a lot. It's like being the most liberal person in the Republican Party right now. But it is at least worth noting because he'll put himself in the right positions and present, help side rim protection and the things that he does in his game.
Yep. I like that trade a lot. Now, on to another trade that I kind of only liked for one side. Today, we found out that CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk are headed to the Washington Wizards for Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey and the 40th pick in the draft. Are you just hearing about this?
Yes, so I have not been paying attention. I thought the
Oh,
next
oh
trade
my
we were
God.
going
I
to
just
talk
broke some
about was going
news
to
to
be
you.
was the Anthony Simons Drew Holiday trade. My head has been in the sand this
Oh,
whole day.
I was going to
So
get the Simons trade last, but yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to break the news to you, but that's awesome. So yeah, let
okay,
me run that through again. CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and they're heading to Washington. Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and the number 40 pick in the draft are headed to the New Orleans Pelicans. So the reason that I like this trade for one team,
yes, please give me
it
the
was
team because
it was the Wizards because CJ
okay,
McCollum is an expiring contract. So they don't have to pay the last 2 years of Jordan Poole's contract, which he's owed $65 million over the next 2 years. Kelly Olynyk, another expiring contract, and also savvy veteran. So I put this online on Threads. This is the depth chart that you've got for the Wizards. You've got Bub Carrington, CJ McCollum, Bilal Coulibaly. Uh, Wait, I'm missing somebody. Who is there's damn it. Now I'm forgetting like who their starting three guy is.
are you talking about
No,
Keyshawn
wait, no,
George?
no. Coulibaly, Chris Middleton,
Yeah.
and then Alex Sarr, backed up by Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, Kelly Olynyk, Corey Kispert, and then the guys they get with the 9th and the 16th draft pick.
Yeah, well, Keyshawn George is still going to be in the
Hey,
mix
guys,
for
Sean
them.
George.
Their rookie
Sure.
last year. Also, I mean, I think that you can probably punt on getting much from Smart and Brogdon at this point. Their goal is probably just to see if they can move those guys to somebody who hope.
That's what, no, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that, so
No. I'm just kind of talking through it. I totally get it. Your distillation of the deal is absolutely spot on in terms of why you would like this as the Wizards. I think that from one standpoint, look, we already know I'm not a big Jordan Poole guy, even though he played pretty good basketball last year, just in terms of the general decision making and having that type of playmaker as the spear of the head for your offensive attack with a lot of young players that you want to be having develop better habits. Not that Jordan Poole, he is known to be a guy that actually works pretty hard in this game, but his approach to the game on the floor just has
yeah.
always driven me crazy. The most mature version of it's still not there for me. And then you save the money and give the space to Bub to see what he is. I don't think Bub Carrington can ever be the offensive player that Jordan Poole is, but I like a lot of what Bub Carrington can give you.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Just, and also just so you know, I think the Wizards have $100 million in cap space from expiring contracts coming now in 2026 because of this deal. Because you're getting 50 million just from McCollum and Olynyk. That's 37 and 13, I think. So that's $50 million right there. And then you got, Chris Middleton's 33 million. Marcus Smart, I think, is on expiring, and maybe Brogdon. I may be wrong about that, but so you got like a lot of money coming off the books. What I don't understand is why the Pelicans would do this. Unless they're trying to do like a reclamation project on Jordan Poole, still think that he's worth something at that price. And
I
then
mean,
Bey, I don't know. Sadiq Bey doesn't feel like a needle mover for me. I don't know. I think he might have been a throw in to make the money work.
well, the Sadiq Bey thing actually doesn't bother me as much because I think you're banking on what is the player coming back from the injury because we've seen a pretty like if Sadiq Bey is your sixth or seventh best player, I think you're fine. He's got good size. He shoots the ball well. Like he makes sense in what the Pelicans do from a size and length standpoint. The Jordan Poole thing bothers me a lot more. I, I get it because you lose DeJounte Murray for all of this season basically as well. And so you had to figure out what you're doing at the guard position, maybe going forward because you don't know what DeJounte Murray looks like. But it's just like, how many players are the Pelicans going to take flyers on that feel like these guys whose
These aren't
they're
flyers when they're worth 30 to 40 million dollars. Like
well, yeah, but okay. Let me switch that. Take risks on
yeah,
these
it's a
players
risk.
who are. It just feels like look between Zion and Brandon Ingram and Jordan Poole and even CJ himself. These are just and DeJounte Murray. These are players that are very fatally flawed players who are not inexpensive, who you keep bringing in and just muck up what you run and do. Like this is just there is a and in fairness, Joe Dumars is new in the situation, so the continuity is not from the highest level standpoint, but it just feels like this is
Yeah.
what the Pelicans keep
I mean,
doing.
let's look at the starting lineup for the Pelicans. You've got Herb Jones, Jordan Poole, Trey Murphy, Zion, if healthy, which is literally his name now.
Yeah.
Zion, if healthy, Williamson, and Misi.
Yves Missi, yeah.
Yeah, so you got those. That's your. So I guess what it does is it resets the age of the group back to all around the same age. But like to what end? Because it's not like that's a winning team, and any like it's gonna be. You're not competitive in the West with that team. So what is the point of what they're doing, taking on the extra money if it's not going to? I
Well,
feel like
that's kind of why I say it's a flyer, because I think for them, they already knew that CJ McCollum was what he was, right? Like he can be a
right,
high level scorer, but he's just not
and he's
gonna.
33
And he's
or
33.
30. Yeah, I think that's how old he is.
Poole is younger. You can probably get some comparable numbers, and Poole is a little bit better, I think, as an on-ball individual creator. Although there's more similarities to Poole and McCollum's game at this point than.
Oh no, it's
Yeah,
actually like you basically just traded back 8 years.
yeah, yeah,
It's the same player in my
yeah.
mind.
I
Without
just.
McCollum's a little bit better of a decision maker.
But like you said, you kind of outline this, and there's nothing to be excited about if you're a
Right. It's
Pelicans
not
fan.
that's
It's
not
not.
I find that these teams, and I meant to bring this up in the Durant trade, whenever you're operating from a position of weakness, maybe you shouldn't be making deals. Maybe
Well,
maybe that's not the time. Sorry, it's getting a little dark here on the
no,
East
you're
Coast.
fine.
Turn my
Yeah.
light on. So maybe it's not that, was the like I know that they had to make a Durant trade. Did they need to make it before the season started because of this draft? Because if I'm underwhelmed by the offers and I'm the Suns, it's still Kevin Durant. Do I
Yes,
not wait?
no, yes, you did, because you weren't going to get more, and that concept of what the draft asset is obviously always means more. We know what this draft is. You were able to get a draft pick that probably matters to you, and
Yeah,
come regular season, now if you're trading him once you get into the season, you're trading to a draft that you're going to have less information about, right? If theoretically you're getting a pick in 26, but also there's a concern of Kevin Durant getting hurt and all these other things. Like Phoenix was screwed basically. Now the Pelicans, this is one of the organizations I was talking about that feel bereft of identity. When we were referencing that earlier, like who are they? What do they want to
I
be?
don't know.
What direction are they going? Now, in fairness to them, they are stuck. Now, this is a prison of their own design, but they are stuck in the prison of having Zion Williamson as the anchor superstar, a guy who, one, is now facing a bunch of other trouble that is tethered to all the off-court decision making and the intellectual stuff. And I'm not trying to minimize what the allegations are. Like, it's beyond just being a bonehead. It's stuff that, like, if
Horrifying stuff.
bears itself out, this guy probably should not be playing professional basketball any further.
100%.
Yeah. But also we can't stay on the floor. We just know that there's no real focus to him, and like that's what the organization feels like. Like
Yeah.
not unfocused, just like I
Sometimes,
don't.
but I think you've seen this with Atlanta, and you're starting to see it a little bit with the Wizards. Sometimes you have to make some poor trades and accept some like bad returns just to get out from under the mess that you made. Because like so, them getting out of the Bradley Beal, contract, but everyone was like, oh my God, they didn't even get a first round pick. They got 5 second-round picks to get off Bradley Beal. What a joke of an organization. Anything to get off of that contract
Imagine
was the
how
right
excited.
decision.
Imagine how excited the Suns would be if they could get 2 second-round picks.
If they
for
could get,
Bradley
if
Beal.
they could get, if they could get one, if they could
Yeah.
get an asset back in a Bradley Beal trade, do you know how fast they would make that trade? So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to kind of eat some humble pie. And so here's the thing: the Wizards are a year ahead of where the Pelicans are trying to unfuck themselves.
Yeah.
So the Wizards are now going to have all this cap space, young players, lottery picks, and you've got trade assets with these veterans who you can give them the Oklahoma City treatment. I mean, what do we talk about all the time after teams win the championship? Everyone tries to copy their style of what got them there. So, Oklahoma City is going to have a bunch of people that are looking around like, see how they bottomed out and they got all these assets and they drafted well and they developed their players. Man, we should try something like that. So I think that's what Washington's doing, and they can go the Oklahoma City method the same way that OKC did with Al Horford. They could do that with Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton is an expiring contract, and he's still a good player if he's healthy. If you can get him playing every other night, taking games off, taking days off, like some days not even traveling with the team. He's just back at the facility working out. That's good for him. It gives him time to ramp himself up. And somebody goes around looking for a small forward, power forward combo guard that can help them in the playoffs. He's at a good, pretty decent number too. 33 million is not like what it used to be.
But we do have to remember we exist in a different ecosystem where trading for a $33 million contract does still present, even if it's coming off the books, some serious challenges for the teams that we think will be in that conversation. But I agree with your general kind of concept and conceit in terms of what Washington's doing and it being smart. Quickly, Brogdon is an unrestricted free agent, so I don't expect him to be back there. He might be in that conversation with the Pacers once again because they already have a familiarity with him.
He began his career with.
Yeah. He began his career with Milwaukee, but
Milwaukee and Indiana. Yeah.
And then he went to Indiana, and then he was part of the Neesmith trade.
And then he was in Boston, and then he was in Portland, and now part of the Holiday trade the first time.
Yes.
We're going to bring that up,
which is the next deal that we can go ahead and get into if you want to.
Please.
I don't have anything more on that. I like it from Washington's standpoint. You laid out the perfect reasoning.
100 million in cap space, 100 million. That also next year it makes them the new Brooklyn when Brooklyn takes their step forward. But they could be the team that takes bad salary but also gains assets because they have space to absorb these contracts. Yeah. This is how it starts, man. These smart organizations are going to look at what Oklahoma City did and they're going to try and replicate it. No, if you're totally not, right. if you're, it's fine if you're in the middle, but if you're at the bottom or near the bottom out. There's no benefit if you don't have the guy to keep trying to put on a competitive basketball team if you don't have competitive players.
And especially when you're in such a young developmental stage for your group anyways, they want to give those guys all the minutes to make all the mistakes and just be bad and learn. And so this is the right path to do it. Let's be bad, let these guys learn, but keep ourselves in a position to be flexible and to be in asset accumulation mode. So once a couple of these guys pop and hit, then we can be aggressive. We can really build out through and around them. And in the meantime, we're going to be able to take a couple other shots in the lottery.
Yep, exactly. So let's do, since we are done with that trade, let's talk about the Drew Holiday being sent to Portland for the second time in 2 years.
Yeah.
Second time that he's, but under much different circumstances. Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks will go back to the Boston Celtics. So the big win for this among Boston, because there's no win in trading a great guy like Drew Holiday, a real culture guy, a guy that makes sense for a lot of teams, because of his style of play. But they get back a guy in Anthony Simons who's just a really gifted offensive player. This does not feel like a tank move to me. This feels like a cost-cutting move. I think I'm trying to look at the numbers right now. I want to say they saved 15 million in salary.
Yeah, I think Simons is like 22.5 and Holiday was 34, but then there's the luxury tax that I think they're trying to get under.
Yeah, so they're trying to get under the second apron.
Yeah.
And I think this lowered the so I think they're still
Porzingis has still got to go.
I want to say they're about 15 million still over the second apron, but Porzingis is probably the next name, and he's garnered some interest around the league. So you get Simons, you replaces some of the offense that you're going to be missing from Jason Tatum, who's their leading scorer. He's also an excellent shooter. Which is another thing that just fits the Boston mold. So you're going to have White, Simons, Jaylen Brown. Not sure about Al Horford. Not sure about Kristaps Porzingis. And so, Boston's going to have some decisions to make. But yeah, just off the cuff, how'd you feel about it when you first saw it?
I liked the deal from a Boston standpoint because we knew what they were going to have to do, and it was just the reality of the decisions that they were going to have to make. And so we're there with them. That and great. I don't really get it from the Portland standpoint, and this is why. I understand wanting to bring in a veteran who can help your young guards develop. He can play kind of both guard positions in that grouping, obviously, with Sharp and Scoot Henderson. But this is a lot of money to commit to a player that does not move the needle enough for this organization to take on that type of salary. And this has been a bad habit of theirs. Like they keep doing this. They bring in guys who they get a little too excited about, but the cost versus what you're going to get from the player for your direction and point at your that you're at right now doesn't make sense to me. This leads me to believe that one of my biggest questions with the Blazers, whether or not they actually were still on the right page of understanding where they are competitively. And look, they took a leap. They were kind of flirting with being a play-in team. But a Drew Holiday move, bringing him in, you have to be at a higher level than that to me, knowing that for now 2 years, he eats up so much of your cap.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the trade that you make, and you have to make money decisions based on this. Drew Holiday's contract, this was one of those things that you and I have talked about before whenever we talked about rewarding guys on championship teams, paying them, whenever he's got a large contract that they had to get off of. And the fact that they could find somebody to take on, what is it, like 104 million over the next 3 seasons?
Yeah.
It's something like that. I mean, it's a lot of money for Drew Holiday, who I think he is 34.
So why does that make sense if you're the Blazers?
Well, so for me, I think what that does is what you did with the Simons trade is you freed up the backcourt to give the keys to Sharp and Scoot. So to me, that's what the point of moving Simons was. And then you bring in a veteran guy who's going to like coach those guys up, but he's also still a desirable player. Again, same problem as Middleton, but without the big injury history, but he's still making a lot of money for a team, but he's still valued around the league, not only as a player, but as a franchise. I mean, as a person, to a franchise. So whenever you look at somebody like Drew Holiday, he's going to mentor your young guards. I think Kevin O'Connor, I saw one of his posts. He said toward the back half of the season that the Blazers had a top 5 defense. Now, obviously, whenever you get into like kind of the dregs at the end of the season, it kind of matters a little bit less. But if that's the commitment they're going to have to a defensive identity, I like him with this, with Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant, who's still a guy I think could be moved. Got 3 centers, Robert Williams, Klingon, and the ghost of DeAndre Ayton, whatever the hell's left of him.
So here's my thing. Between Ayton, Holiday, and Jeremy Grant, you are invested $110 million?
I believe that's something like that.
No, it maybe a little less.
It's 30 million. It's 30 million for Grant. I want to say it's 35 or 37 for Ayton, and then whatever
34, I think, for Holiday.
And then 100.
Whatever it is. So it's over $100 million for 3 players who are not really on. I know timeline has become too cliche of a term lately, but for a group that needs to be in this young developmental stage, like for the reasons you say, I really like that. But for this other part, like
the money's hard.
The money is really difficult to look at from this,
especially considering what Portland is.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm saying because you're not competing for a championship.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You shouldn't be having these like financial constrictions that are eating you up. So I guess what they're hoping for is that, Drew's maybe a culture fit. Maybe they can move off of Grant at that $30 million number. Ayton they're stuck with, but I want to say that contract is not for. I'm going to look this up, but you can go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're just looking. I believe this is Ayton's last year.
I want to say it's an expiring, so maybe that's something you can use to get off. I'm about to look it up and check it out on Spotrac.
This is his last year at 36 million.
36 million. Okay.
Yeah.
That's for it expiring. That's not the worst.
No, not at all. But like, it'll be interesting to see who's willing to make a deal for that. Like, what's going to be the player out there that the Blazers can get? Because usually when you're an expiring contract of that type of value, you're taking back in a distressed asset, right? Like you're getting a player that for whatever reason the organization no longer wants as well, because it's just so much money. And so you're not really I'm not very excited about what the haul from DeAndre Ayton come February, whenever, is going to be. And kind of the same for Jeremy Grant. I mean, it's just like Grant he was fine last season, but he wasn't good enough that I think teams are going to open the pocketbook for a guy who has been kind of a below average defensive player over the last 2 years and whose shot seems to be kind of coming back to earth a little bit. But so it's just, I'm worried that what we're going to be looking at midway through the season with the Blazers is a really expensive bench unit of guys that aren't giving them a lot of what we need, and some players that are developing still, and not enough of like it all making sense once it comes time. Now, I liked what we saw last year, and so I want to see that direction continue. And I do think the conversation about Drew Holiday as an organizational pillar, as a guy that's going to be able to really help these players adapt and learn the right way to play. I think some of the combo guard stuff with Scoot can make sense with Drew Holiday, even though I'm still convinced that Scoot's more of a point guard, but he's obviously been playing kind of a little bit more of of both positions, and they physically have some similarities that I think Scoot can learn some stuff from a defensive standpoint that Holiday has. Not that Scoot's nearly.
I'm really excited to just see like an entire backline full of defense that gets the ball out to Sharp and Scoot in transition and just let those two wild horses run wild.
Yeah.
That's just for me, like them in transition with all that speed and all that athleticism. That's where I think you can find a Blazers team that can thrive. And then in the half court, that's what's going to be interesting, is seeing them, what Drew Holiday can teach them about setting up an offense in the half court, because that was not really his job when he was in Boston either. They kind of left that to Derek White if they wanted somebody to run the offense in the half court.
Yeah, but we have seen that with him in Philadelphia. Yeah, we've seen it in Philadelphia and in Milwaukee.
He's a champion. Like, there's nothing. I will never be upset at bringing in a guy with championship experience, as long as it's at the right price, which is what your argument seems to be.
Yeah. Now, let the record also show that the Blazers were just tied for 21st in pace last season. And so I'm not.
Drew Holiday's not going to help them get out and run.
Yeah. I mean, I sure hope so. Drew Holiday's aging a little bit, but I'm with you. Like, I would like to see, Advia is one of the best open court finishers in the league at the position. So they have the guys that you want to say. I mean, I even think guys like Chris Murray, who struggled to generate offense in the half court, would benefit from getting out and going a little bit more. But Chauncey Billups never played that style.
So more obvious shots, more obvious minutes.
We had an entire episode called Denny Avdia Fanboys. Yeah, we already fanboys.
We love some Denny Avdia.
So ultimately, this deal doesn't do a lot for me for Portland, but I understand it from both sides. I get it.
I do too. I mean, I understand what the Celtics are doing. They have financial constraints and no Jason Tatum next year. Got to start moving those contracts. Yeah. But they love Derek White. They love Jaylen Brown. And Anthony Simons, I think, is going to slot in really nicely next to them as far as offensively goes. We'll see how he does in the Joe Mazzulla system. But obviously, this offensive system is run and shoot a lot of threes, which Anthony Simons is really good at.
That man has never seen a three he didn't like.
He didn't. He never passed it up. So
I would take the over on Anthony Simons with 4 or more games with 14 3-point attempts.
Wow.
I think that you're going to see I think you're going to see a few games where he's like getting them up.
Those random games where Pritchard shot like 15 threes,
Exactly. And Simons to me is a better shooter than Pritchard is on like the aggregate. I think Pritchard in certain situations, but I think Simons just generally, he's got a quicker release. He's more comfortable with the hand in his face. He's bigger, so that benefits him versus Pritchard. Yeah.
One last thing I did want to talk about. The Knicks interviewed Micah Nori, for the assistant coach for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that makes Micah Nori, Mike Brown, and Taylor Jenkins as the 3 coaches they've interviewed. Just real quickly, of those 3, do you have a preference? Is there anyone that moves the needle and excites you a little bit?
I mean, of the 3, I think Jenkins makes the most sense there. Part of the issue with Taylor Jenkins in Memphis was apparently he was not getting along well with Zach Kleiman and the brass there. which just kind of underscored by getting fired before we go into the playoffs. And so that still is like those communication problems obviously were an issue in New York. Like this whole thing was so poorly played by the
Yeah.
Knicks. It just, I mean, at the end of the day, like I like Mike Brown. I think Mike Brown got a bum deal in Sacramento.
I think he's the same as Thibodeau, just the other side of the ball. He's an offensive minded coach, and he's a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser.
What's funny though is he started in the league as a defensive coach, and then he became an offensive coach. Which is weird.
But that's. But I mean, when was the last time you saw a Mike Brown team that was well coached defensively?
In fairness to him in Sacramento, that is a
poor roster construction.
You cannot ask the man to make filet mignon when you're giving him cat food in a can, on the defensive end. Like what was he supposed to do there? But your point remains, and the bigger part of the whole conversation, just like one, I just kind of want this to be over because I'm tired of thinking and talking about the Knicks, even though I'm sure as an organization they really love that. But two, like how many bad, like hubris-driven decisions? Like we are kind of working ourselves back into a weird era of like the bad organizational stuff at the top, feeling glaring over the last 6 months of this season. Like maybe it's just me being locked into this mindset, but it feels like a lot of organizations are making really bad choices that feel knee-jerk, and then they have to respond to them. Obviously, Nico Harrison being the apex predator in that. But like, I just don't, this doesn't, like, it reeks of desperation from a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row. It shouldn't be like this. Like them kind of being the person at the end of the night, just throwing themselves at whoever will take them home, and them getting stiff-armed by everybody. Like, it's not a good look.
Yeah, they just, you fire your coach without a plan in place. Like, I know that tampering in the NBA is illegal, but we all know that it happens. You're telling me they couldn't have gotten a sense from like Jason Kidd and, all the other coaches that they tapped and were like, hey, Quinn Snyder, are you available? They couldn't have asked the question before they fired their coach without anybody knowing?
Your question is why I think it kind of reeks of this ego. I think they thought that
they thought everyone was like, well, who doesn't want to coach in New York?
Yeah. They're Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man with the arms open, just like, I am the thing, and everybody else is like, I'm not like.
But like, why would anybody want to coach in New York when you just canned a guy who got you to the Eastern Conference Finals? We just saw how you treated the last coach who was good for you. So why the hell wouldn't you do the same thing to me?
Exactly.
So
nailed it. And let's talk about historically the organization over the last 30 years. Pat Riley left because he was upset. They fired Jeff Van Gundy when Jeff Van Gundy had one of their best runs, as a head coach, and didn't replace him with, like it.
Then they went. They wanted to do a little star hunting, and they tried to get all these major name coaches, and the Phil Jackson era was a mess. Dan Thomas was a mess. I mean, just
on it goes.
It never. Mike D'Antoni.
Yes.
I mean, we can keep going.
I was going to say we can play this for a few minutes, but for the sake of 2 hour long podcast, we can finally dip out.
We try not to go 2 hours, guys, but the NBA never stops.
Yes.
I don't know if I have any other NBA news or anything else that you've got about that. I think we'll probably see. Okay, here's my last question, then we can call it.
Yeah.
Who do you think the next, I'm not going to say star player, I'm going to say marquee name that gets traded? Do you think it's Porzingis? Is that not far behind?
I mean, Porzingis is likely.
Markkanen.
I think Porzingis is very likely to get dealt. I'm not putting him at that level of star player, but if we want to, it's him.
No, I mean, he's a notorious, notable player, I guess.
I don't think Markkanen ends up going anywhere in Utah. That's tough. I mean, if Garland, now that we know Garland's missing part of the start of next season, I don't expect him to be on the move, but I would just keep watching that situation. Because I think between the injury and what's been happening in Cleveland, I'm not going to be surprised if he ends up going. The De'Aaron Fox conversation is kind of interesting because
interesting.
because the amount of money that you have to put into him as a player on a extension kind of devalues what we think of him as a player. And now we know it seems almost a certainty that Dylan Harper is going to be there. Now Harper can play on and off ball, so you can play both guys together.
But
But
then
I
you got
just,
the Castle problem.
yeah, exactly. There's just a lot of like, that would be another situation I'm on. I don't know that I can have like. There's nobody that comes immediately to mind that I'm like that guy's definitely moving. I mean,
Yeah.
Durant and Holiday seemed to be the most obvious, but then I didn't expect Desmond Bain to go anywhere. Like at least we talked about Memphis.
He was not the person I thought was going to get
Yeah.
moved.
Although I do need to kind of like backtrack that because you and I said we expected Memphis to probably actually make kind of a big move after things shook out for them. So
I didn't
that they
that, but
yeah. So how about you? Do you have anybody you've got kind of a feeling of?
I kind of thought it was going to be Markkinen. I thought that I don't know. I've heard some rumblings that he's not super happy with the direction of the organization,
Nor
but
should he be.
yeah, but then Danny Ainge just hired his son away from Boston, and he was basically like, "We're done tanking."
Yeah, that's easy to say, but look at that roster.
Yeah, but then I look around
exactly
and I'm like,
do you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what do you have that you can say that?
Yeah,
Like,
if you
so like Markkinen is not. Also, I think they missed the window when he was going to be valuable, so they might not even be worth it for him to be traded. I don't know. Giannis is still out there.
Yeah, but it feels like, especially with what's happened to the East, Milwaukee's probably not going to move Giannis now.
Darius Garland is still very movable. Darius Garland might be my answer.
Yeah.
If the Cleveland was going to make, I mean, I've got no indication that they're, because they have no reason to. Cleveland can just run it back. They just won 64 games.
And they're going to be my team out of the East for now. Like that's if you ask me as of right now, who's in the finals next season, it's the Thunder and the Cavaliers.
By the way, when we always make fun of Joel Embiid never making it out of the second round, neither is Donovan Mitchell.
Oh, I know, and I've mentioned it several times.
I just want to make sure that people are aware that like.
But in fairness to Donovan Mitchell, his profile is not what we were giving to Joel Embiid.
Right.
And that's part of the problem is when we talk about, like, obviously I had my whole rant about where the Athletic had Embiid ranked all time. Embiid is won an MVP.
Don't bring that up to me.
How many times we just kind of pencil or pen him in as a top 5 player in seasons where he's not going to perform. Those things like Donovan, and the other thing is, if you look at just their playoff performances, Donovan Mitchell has had some huge playoff series. Joel Embiid has had a couple big performances, but his series numbers almost always look significantly worse than his regular season.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's it for me, man. I think that's all I've got on the NBA roundup. Interesting moves out there still to be made, and we got the draft tomorrow night.
Yes, and if you're interested in recording a draft response on Thursday or something,
I've done zero. I have obviously been so locked in on this Thunder season. I have done zero draft prep. I mean, you want to know what a sicko Sam Presti is? He was doing Sunday workouts the day of the finals. He was working out players for the draft on Wednesday.
Oh, Sam Presti never sleeps, but
that is disgusting. I mean, that guy is an NBA Finals in the balance, and he's like, got to get my next pick.
How about Kevin Pritchard makes the deal to get their second round pick in 2006 back when they deal Mojave King, and like the Pacers were much in the same
finals.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
So we don't have to do any drafting. I will pimp something.
I'll react with you.
Okay.
I just won't have the information that you have.
Well, we'll talk about it. Stay tuned, guys. In the meantime, I'm in the middle of trying to put together probably about 10,000 words on the draft. For anybody who's been following me since last season, I did this last year as well, where I kind of do it more as a response to the draft. There's enough people out there doing amazing work on big boards, and I don't get to see as much college basketball as I would like. And this year, I actually didn't take the trip I normally take with my dad, which is a really great opportunity for me normally to see about 10 to 20 prospects. That being said, I will have a breakdown of hopefully the entire first round. We'll see if I get to all those guys, but at least the lottery plus maybe through 20, where I give you kind of like the best version, what concerns me with the guy, and what I think the fit is with where they're drafted. So I'll have that out for you Thursday morning. I've been cramming and doing a lot of work. In fairness to myself, I did interview Jonathan Wasserman earlier this year, and I keep myself abreast of this stuff as much as I can.
Very
But the
cool
guys,
interview, by the way.
I appreciate that. The guys you need to be paying attention to right now, Sam Vecini put together an absolute tome that was just was completely insane. In all respect to him, I really love the Game Theory podcast, even though I don't mention it here as much as I should. But that guy, like that work was awesome. And then fortunately for me, I get to have some resources that I can tap into. Just having gone to enough thing and seen player evaluators and stuff, not really any inside information, but I get to at least kind of see if my direction was correct. So I'm not flying blind with these things. So hopefully you guys will check that out, and it gives you some value in terms of assessing what you can expect out of some of these guys from the first round.
Can they find that on the Basketball Intelligence Network?
That will be Live Breathe Ball. That will be
Ball. Okay.
We'll put it up on Basketball Intelligence as well, because it'll be part of our rundown of all the day's articles,
Substack and all that stuff.
Yeah, but this will be it'll be my first time writing in 2.5 months, at least in terms of finishing something. I've got about 30 things I put 1,000 words into and never finish. But this will be an actual finished thing. I'll, maybe part of the reason I have this cough is because of all the rust and dust that was being kicked up as I was typing away.
That might be a fun podcast in the offseason. Aaron goes through his 1,000-word drafts and just what he was thinking and when he was writing the article that he never finished. I would be interested in hearing that.
I'd be more than willing to do that, because Lord knows yes, I have a ton of them.
Live, Breathe, Ball. That is Aaron. That is Aaron's Substack. That is his, that you can sign up for. Should definitely do that. Part of the Basketball Intelligence Network, as is this podcast. Thank you guys all for listening, subscribing. Please rate it, leave a comment. We are always open and interested in hearing from our listeners, our viewers, whoever's on YouTube. Please comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We've got the WNBA in full swing. We are definitely going to be watching a lot of that, and we will definitely bring some more W. And like I said, we're going to cover the draft. Aaron more so than me because he knows more, but I will definitely be invested in Summer League. Love me.
And I will be at Summer League for the first.
And it's because it's in your hometown, baby.
Of course. And I've gone the last 4 years. So this will be actually shout out to my boy Lou, who's going to be joining me for a couple days of it. But be ready. I'm not sure if I'll see day one, which, considering the history of these things, may mean I miss like Cooper and a couple other guys because they may only end up playing one game.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to see the development of other players and just see those guys that flash these certain little skills. Ryan Rollins and a couple other guys last year were players who I saw kind of pop and ended up having good impacts on their teams that I don't think a lot of people were expecting. So I look forward to that.
Maybe I should make a trip out to Vegas sometime, check out some Summer League live.
Please do. I would love to. Obviously, I got to hang out with Rush last year. That was awesome. I appreciate both of them being willing to sit and listen to me just blather on about basketball, and I got to enjoy their company in general.
That's all I do during basketball games too. I just talk ball, man. Yeah. And then I just, my eyes dart around the arena, and then I started talking about things I observe, like I'm a child in the backseat of a car on a road trip.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that car's blue. That's a blue car I've seen. And you're like,
slug bug yellow.
Great. Shut that kid up back there. Give him a screen. But yeah, that is the end of the 24-25 season. That's the end of our podcast covering this NBA season, but we still have a lot more to cover throughout the summer. And then the lead up to next year's draft, we might be recording a little less frequently. We both have lives that we have to live, but very excited for this podcast. Aaron, it's been an absolute pleasure that we started this back in January, and I'm super excited to see where it goes and how it grows. We're already on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. This is really cool, man. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you. This has been wonderful, and I'm excited for it.
Nobody else I'd rather talk ball with. And to all of you who listen and watch and follow, thank you. And we end this podcast the way that we always do by saying adios. That was how long were we talking? That one felt longer.
We waited for a little over 2 hours.
Okay, that's about average then. It's usually what
Yes.
I mean.
Why am I?
That's not abnormal for us.
No, it wasn't. Oh, okay. It must have just, that's fine. Must have
Still
stopped
so
the recording.
embarrassed. I got Danny Ainge and Kevin McHale.